until 1780. During that year, Virginia and Pennsylvania finally came into agreement over their mutual borders. And Virginia conceded control over the points of Pennsylvania for good. By 1783, it did become apparent that the United States was going to win its war for independence. And those who were opposed to this notion of a 14th colony or a 14th state made it clear that any further discussion about that would be considered an act of treason, punishable by death. And so, the initiative to create West Sylvania quickly died. As you take a look around, you can see this is a very unique area. The confluence of the two rivers, or the points, makes Pittsburgh very unique. As you can see, we have a mountain on one side of us and rolling hills on the other side, which also makes Pittsburgh very unique. Our geography and our topography makes Pittsburgh very unique. This has created a rather unique citizen. On more than one occasion, Pittsburgh has been voted the #1 most livable city in America. More recently, Pittsburgh has been voted as having the #1 ugliest accent in America. The only reason we haven't won ugliest accent in the world is they haven't had that survey yet. Even how we refer to ourselves might be considered somewhat fun, interesting, and even a little strange. I'll give you some typical examples. If you're from France, you're French, right? From Switzerland, you're Swiss. If you're from Texas, you're a Texan. If you're from Holland, well, you're Dutch. That's a bad example. But if you're from Pittsburgh, ladies and gentlemen, you are a Pittsburgher. So right from the word go, we kind of refer to ourselves as large slabs of red meat. And Pittsburghese, as we lovingly refer to it, is not just a local colloquialism. It has been studied by linguistics experts at Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Pittsburgh. It's been identified as a genuine, distinct dialect, unique to Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania. Probably our most famous phrase is how we refer to you or you all. We say yins. If Pittsburgher like, you might say yins. Most of us say yins. We don't care for OUs and OWs in this town. We don't say things like downtown or cloudy or half an hour. We say FR, cloudy, downtown. Probably our most famous weatherman, Joe DeRoto, could never have had a broadcast career anywhere but in Pittsburgh with forecasts such as, yeah, it's probably cloudy in Allegheny County, but 20% to rain downtown. We'll talk a lot more Pittsburghese over the course of our tour today, but there's a lot of other fun, interesting, and even a little strange places to visit and talk about. Take a quick look over to the left side of the boat. You'll see what appears to be a long, angled railroad track going up and down the side of Mount Washington. Or we might say around here, Mount Washington. That is the Monongahela Incline. The Monongahela Incline is one of only 2 inclines that continues to operate to this day. Although at one time, there were as many as 17 inclines across Mount Washington, and a total of 23 inclines throughout the entire city. At one time, inclines were how we overcame our very ridiculous topography. And the newer inclines go back to 1884, during the whole district with these
Scusate. Sapevano di Borla?
on top of that incline. They call it the 10 Incline Museum.
Buonè.
A year later, they added the city's first roller coaster, the Gravity Railroad. The Gravity Railroad never tried to be able to travel 1 mile in just 45 seconds, or roughly 80 miles per hour. So fast roller coasters, not a new thing in this town. So many times they take the incline back in the day. Well, a 2 or 3 times in the car might cost about 10 cents. You want to haul your ox with you, maybe another quarter. But in 1909, the city gave Mount Washington's commuters The Indian Trail steps were free to use. But if you want to use them, you got to be really in great shape or really tight with your money. So it takes about a mile to climb and about 1,000 steps. But that wasn't too much like that at first. The Northern Inclines were happy with this no-cost alternative to their services. And so, true story, they hired teenagers to dress as ghosts and strategy must have worked because the Indian Trail steps were abandoned in the 1930s, and the incline nearest to it, the Duquesne Incline, is still in operation to this day. And one time Pittsburgh in the city of incline. We remain the city of staircases. We have more staircases than any other city in the world. 740 sets of stairs, totaling 18 miles and about 35,000 steps. Of those 740 sets of stairs, 344 of them have been declared legal streets, even though they are not navigable whatsoever by car. This has resulted in an odd phenomenon known as paper or orphan streets. Not only are they recognized as streets on maps, but also in your GPS systems and MapQuest and Google Maps. So please, ladies and gentlemen, if you are using a GPS system to navigate your way to the city, and it tells you to make a right turn, please note this. You will not be the first driver to commit such an error. And one time, Pittsburgh is the city of inclines. We remain the city of staircases. We are also the city of bridges. We have more bridges than any other city in the world. 446 bridges of the Pittsburgh metro area. So if you're considering a more romantic city like Venice, Italy, is having those bridges, Pshaw. Rank amateurs, the measly 409 bridges. One such bridge we are currently approaching is celebrating its 60th birthday this year. On June 19th, in 1959 at 11 a.m., the Fort Pitt Bridge opened for the first time. It's the world's first computer-drafted double-decker concrete arch bridge. It carries 150,000 cars a day across its span. 4 lanes of traffic, upper level and lower level, into and out of the downtown area. However, the Fort Pitt Bridge is not for the faint of heart, nor the uninitiated driver. In fact, the Fort Pitt Bridge has earned its very own social media meme. It goes like this. The right lane must exit left. The left lane must exit right. Here's 300 feet. Make it happen. As we clear the Fort Pitt Bridge over to the right side, we can enjoy a view of the Fort Pitt Museum, located just beyond the ramp to the Fort Pitt Bridge in Point State Park. The Fort Pitt Museum is an outstanding resource to history buffs. All the artifacts and information you could ever want about the original Fort Pitt and its predecessor, Fort Duquesne.
Mommy,
What's particularly interesting about the Fort Pitt Museum is that 5-sided structure is built on the footprint of one of Fort Pitt's original 5 bastions. So if you take a look at that structure, it has 4 more similarly sized structures to it, all held together by long, straight, thick walls in a pentagon fashion, and it gives you an idea for the enormous size that Fort Pitt was, and why it took 2 years to complete between 1759 and 1761. Fort Pitt was named in honor of William Pitt, who was the Prime Minister of England at the time. It's also how Pittsburgh got its name. But the British general John Forbes, who took Fort Duquesne from the French and established Fort Pitt for the British, was of Scottish descent. And so he pronounced it Pittsboro. And so the village of Pittsboro was chartered in 1759. But that was way too many syllables for Pittsburghers. So over time we smashed it from 3 syllables to 2, and lovingly refer to it as Pittsburgh today. Currently we are sailing along the Monongahela River, which is a very unique river unto itself. It is a mud-bottom river, and is one of only 5 rivers in the entire world that flows north its entire length. The Monongahela River begins in Fairmont, West Virginia, 128 miles away, at a much higher elevation. So gravity takes over, and the river flows north its entire length. It also has not one single island along its river's length, which is very unusual for a river of its size. The Monongahela River comes together with the Allegheny River across the point on the other side to form the Ohio River. Because of these 3 rivers, Pittsburgh is accessible via a waterway from anywhere on planet Earth. Here at the point, the birthplace of the Ohio River, you sail that river 981 miles to Cairo, Illinois. From there, hang a left on the mighty Mississippi. Sail the Mississippi about another 1,000 miles to New Orleans, where it meets into the Gulf of Mexico. From there, pick your ocean. You sail through the Panama Canal to get to the Pacific, or sail around Florida to get to the Atlantic.
Oh my.
Because of these three rivers,
Oh.
Pittsburgh is the second largest inland waterport in the country. So when you come to realize how important a role these rivers play in Pittsburgh's industry and economy, and you see how wide they are, you're probably thinking to yourself that they must be awfully deep. Well, in fact, the average depth of these three rivers is only about 16.5 feet. And they're only that deep because the extensive locks and dams have been installed throughout all three rivers. Without those locks and dams, the average depth of these three rivers would only be between 2 and 3 feet 9 months out of the year. Well, in that case, you'll probably ask yourself, well, Ron, what could you possibly lose in 16.5 feet depth of water? Well, boats, would you believe a B-25 bomber? True story. On January 31st of 1956, Major William Dotson was piloting his B-25 Mitchell bomber over the Pittsburgh area on a routine training flight. With the engine failing, and having no visible airstrip with which to land, Major Dotson had to make a hasty decision. He made a splashdown, wheels up landing in the Monongahela River, the river we just left, a few miles from here near what is now the Homestead Grace Bridge. Initially, all 6 crew members survived the crash. But as the bomber sank further into the 34-degree water, sadly 2 crew members did not survive. But their bodies were not recovered for months after the accident. Within hours, the Coast Guard cutter the Forsythia was on the scene, and its anchor snagged on the wing of the sunken bomber. But the line slipped, and the bomber sank further into its watery grave, never to be seen again. For 2 weeks, the Army Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard searched for the missing bomber, to no avail. So how do you lose a 15-foot-high B-25 bomber in less than 20 feet depth of water? To this day, it remains one of Pittsburgh's greatest unsolved mysteries. Now that we've scraped across the Ohio and are now sailing along the Allegheny River, over to the right side, we can enjoy the view of Point State Park, 36 acres of preserved green space and its iconic fountain. That main jet of water can reach heights up to 150 feet. In fact, prior to 2009, there was no way to control the height of that main jet of water, and so on a gusty, windy day, the water could be carried by the wind all the way to the Wyndham Hotel at the end of Point State Park. Between 2009 and 2013, the entire fountain was shut down for major restoration and repair work. During that time, they installed a wind sensor system to control the height of the main jet of water. So now, if you keep an eye on that main jet of water at the fountain for any length of time, you will see that it will rise or lower based on wind speed. We're now approaching the Fort Duquesne Bridge, which is a sister bridge of the Fort Pitt Bridge. They join together at the heart of Point State Park, and the name's a little bit symbolic. The Fort Duquesne Bridge is a much smaller bridge than Fort Pitt Bridge is. Just like the original Fort Duquesne, built by the French in 1754, was much smaller than the original Fort Pitt, built by the British between 1759 and 1761. But that's not what makes the Fort Duquesne Bridge fun, interesting, and even a little strange. What makes the Fort Duquesne Bridge fun, interesting, and even a little strange is the fact that it was completed many years before the connecting interstate. So for the longest period of time, the Fort Duquesne Bridge simply stopped over the Allegheny River. Locals coined it the Bridge to Nowhere, with good reason. Well, like any active construction zone, the end of the Bridge to Nowhere had plenty of concrete barriers, traffic cones, and warning signs. Did that stop a University of Pittsburgh student in 1964 from driving his family's 1959 station wagon off the Bridge to Nowhere? It did not. Somehow this young man navigated past all those barriers, the car flipped once in the air, and landed roof first in the Allegheny River. We like to share that story because miraculously he survived. It's since been the subject of much jokedom, scorn, and ridicule for decades. In fact, a local radio station held a contest over which car could drive the furthest distance off the bridge to nowhere. And shockingly, a 1959 station wagon won the contest. There were no other entries. The bridge to nowhere, the car over the bridge to nowhere, the sunken B-25 bomber. These are just tips of the iceberg of the many scandals and controversies to rock the city of Pittsburgh over the course of its history. But no scandal was so great and no controversy so hotly debated as how do you spell it? How do you spell Pittsburgh? Do you spell it with a GH at the end or just a G? The answer is yes. Pittsburgh was founded in 1758 by General John Forrest. He, being of Scottish descent, would have spelled it with a GH at the end, and that's how the city was founded. However, in 1890, the United States Board of Geographic Names issued an edict. In other news, in 1890, we had a U.S. Board of Geographic Names issue edicts. They declared that all cities ending in "burg" must drop the final H, if it had one, in the spirit of uniformity. Now, giving you a brief glimpse into Pittsburgher mentality and Pittsburgher attitude, you can imagine how well this went over. There were protests for 20 years over the loss of our beloved H. So voluminous were the calls and so passionate were the cries for change that eventually the United States Board of Geographic Names relented, and they sent a letter to the then Senator of Pennsylvania, which I will quote to you verbatim because you cannot make stuff like this up, folks. To the Honorable George T. Oliver, United States Senate. Sir, at a special meeting held by the United States Geographic Board on July 19th of 1911, the previous decision with regard to the spelling of Pittsburgh without the final H was reconsidered, and the following form was adopted. Pittsburgh with an H, a city in Pennsylvania. In parentheses, not Pittsburgh with just a G. Very respectfully, E.S. Sloan, Secretary. There was much rejoicing. Well, during that 20-year period, most Pittsburghers just ignored the whole no H at the end of Pittsburgh thing. But there were those who did feel compelled to comply with the federal mandate. And there are still some reminders of that era in Pittsburgh history. If you are from out of town and you get a chance, I highly recommend you visit Kennywood Amusement Park. Kennywood Amusement Park has earned its reputation as the nation's #1 traditional family amusement park. It has all the thrill rides you could possibly want, plus uses geography and gardens and flowers you'd expect to find at a traditional park. So if you get a chance, I do recommend you visit Kennywood Amusement Park. If you are from Pittsburgh and you have yet to visit Kennywood Park, just get off the boat now, you don't belong here. Well, at Kennywood, there's a special part of the park called Pittsburgh's Lost Kennywood. It turns out that Pittsburgh's Lost Kennywood is a tribute to another amusement park. If you don't know the name of Frederick Ingersoll, Frederick Ingersoll is credited with the invention of the Figure 8 roller coaster, the Log Flume, and the creation of the nation's first chain of amusement parks, called Luna Park. In 1905, Ingersoll opened up Pittsburgh's Luna Park, because this was when Pittsburgh was deemed not to have an H at the end of it. The grand entrance to Pittsburgh's Luna Park, Pittsburgh was spelled with just a G. Pittsburgh's Lost Kennywood is a love letter, for all intents and purposes, to the original Pittsburgh's Luna Park. So, the grand entrance to Pittsburgh's Lost Kennywood, Pittsburgh is spelled with just a G. To this day and every year, management gets complaints about the misspelling. Now, on our fun, interesting, and even a little strange trip through Pittsburgh, we don't point out as many of the skyscrapers and landmarks as we do as for our classic cruise. But there is one building that I feel qualifies, in my humble opinion. So take a look over to the right side of the boat, and we can enjoy the view of the David L. Lawrence Convention Center right here along the riverbank. That is not the building I'm talking about. Right behind it is the tallest building in the city, That tall, dark brown, triangular-shaped skyscraper with the UPMC logo at the top of it. That's not the building I'm talking about. The one that I'm talking about is located right between them. That tall, light gray skyscraper with the pyramid shape at the top. That is the Grant Building. At one time, that was the tallest building in the city and was the world headquarters for Gulf Oil Corporation. Well, Gulf Oil decided they wanted to do something very unique about their world headquarters. So the top of that pyramid was covered with thousands of blue and orange neon lights, reflecting Gulf Oil's corporate colors. So at night, if the weather was bad, the pyramid would blink blue. If the weather was good, the pyramid would blink orange. Well, that's pretty easy to remember. But in 2012, the Gulf Tower underwent a major renovation, and all the old neon was replaced with LED lighting. With LED, you can create just about any color palette you could possibly imagine. So on special events or holidays going on in the city, the pyramid might reflect those colors. A good example is during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the pyramid is pink. But on a typical day, each tier of that pyramid reflects a different color as it relates to the weather. Things like temperature, wind speed, precipitation, and humidity. After doing all that work in 2012, the developers put out a press release and gave out lots of handouts so everybody would know what each color meant as it related to the weather. That was 7 years ago. Today, nobody has any idea what those colors mean as far as weather is concerned, but it sure is pretty at night. Pittsburgh has been the site of many firsts and many innovations. In 1979, Carnegie Mellon University was the first university in the country to establish a robotics institute on campus. Since that time, CMU has been at the forefront of robotics development, innovation, and the creation of artificial intelligence. But probably a far more important pop culture phenomenon was created back in 1982 at CMU when a university professor punctuated his humorous statement on an online chat board by using a colon and a parenthesis, symbolizing a vertical smiley face, and thus the emoticon was born. Since that time, any wide range of human emotions could be created just with a stroke of a keyboard. Today, emoticons have been replaced by their more contemporary emojis, but none of that could have been possible without a university professor at CMU by creating the world's first emoticon. In a moment, we're going to take a break in the narration to give you a chance to stretch your legs and move by the boat if you like. Possibly visit that first deck. We have that full-service wet bar and snack bar available for your enjoyment. Maddie is downstairs, anxiously waiting for you to come down and order your favorite refreshing beverage, be that a bottle of water, soda, or one of our signature cocktails, such as the Golden Anchor Lemonade, a refreshing mix of raspberry liqueur, vodka, and lemonade. But before I take the break, I'm going to share a little more Pittsburghese with you in a special format with apologies to Jeff Foxworthy. If you owns a Steelers jersey, and then a second Steelers jersey to wear just for special occasions, Jens might be a Pittsburgher. If Jens uses a folding chair to save your parking space in the street, Jens might be a Pittsburgher. If Jens says stuff like Keller instead of color, and Pittsburgh instead of Pittsburgh, Jens might be a Pittsburgher. If Jens goes to mow your lawn, and Jens find a car, Jens might be a Pittsburgher. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes.
क्या खाना तिमी हाँ आऊ न आऊ यो घुम्नु चाहिँ नि पर्यो नि
I'm downstairs in the bar.
Downstairs, Haru. Let's go downstairs. Sorry. म आइपुग्छु कि यसो गरे
Folks, we do have a captain of the day on board the boat right now. If you received your hat, certificate, and boat whistle, please locate one of our deck crew. Once again, another captain of the day is on board the vessel right now. If you have your hat, boat whistle, and certificate, just find one of our deck crew. Be escorted to the pilot house. Thank you.
पर्दैन
Ladies,
बाबाले मतिर भन्छ भन्न
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to return to the narration in just a moment, but before we do, I'm going to ask a simple favor of you. Memorize our website, gatewayclipper.com. That's pretty easy to remember, right? At gatewayclipper.com, you get information about the many different types of cruises that the Gateway Clipper fleet has for your enjoyment. Of course, our 1-hour sightseeing cruises with the 4 different narrations are among our most popular. But we have dinner cruises, brunch cruises, late night party cruises, even cruises for the kids. And the website also features convenient online ticketing. A newer feature of the website is gatewayclipper.com/photos. If you like, you can view that page on the website and enjoy all the photos taken by professional photographers on today's cruise. If you like, you can purchase and download those photos right to your computer, your laptop, or other portable device. So visit gatewayclipper.com or gatewayclipper.com/photos.
I'm gonna eat upstairs. I'm gonna eat upstairs.
As we continue to make our way back toward the point along the Allegheny River, over to the right side is a shining example of Pittsburgh innovation and Pittsburgh's manufacturing legacy. That is the Alcoa building, and Alcoa is an acronym for the Aluminum Corporation of America. Today, aluminum is used for everything from wrapping up yesterday's leftovers to building planes, trains, and automobiles to the exterior of that building. But prior to 1886, aluminum was considered a luxury. It was very rare, and it sold for $545 per pound. It was used primarily by the elite Victorians as jewelry. But all that changed in 1886 when an enterprising Pittsburgher by the name of Charles Martin Hall developed a chemical and electrical process for pulling aluminum out of clay banks. We're going to make aluminum cheap, bountiful, and accessible, and used in so many versatile ways throughout the decades and into the 21st century. As we continue along the Allegheny River, we're now approaching the Roberto Clemente Bridge. The Roberto Clemente Bridge is named after, of course, the world-famous Pittsburgh Pirate Hall of Famer, and is the only bridge that is closed to vehicular traffic on Pittsburgh Pirates game days. But the Roberto Clemente Bridge also features another special feature. So take a look up at the bridge as we pass by, and you'll see the fences on both sides of the Roberto Clemente Bridge are covered in padlocks. Now, of course, this is a long-standing and cherished Pittsburgh tradition in which couples will venture onto the Roberto Clemente Bridge, put a padlock on the fence, and throw the key into the river, symbolizing their unyielding devotion to each other and their desire never to part.
a long-standing and cherished Pittsburgh tradition. You know that we stole from France. And of course, as we clear the Roberto Clemente Bridge over to the right side, we can enjoy the view of PNC Park, home of the 5-time world champion Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team. This is not just personal bias, folks. ESPN Magazine has rated PNC Park as the #1 ballpark in the country to enjoy a Major League Baseball game. 36,000 seats, all with an intimate view of the playing field. In fact, the designers promise us that even the seats all the way up toward the roof are no more than 88 feet in the action. In a few minutes, we'll get a grand view of Heinz Field, home of the 6-time Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers. This might be a great time to talk about Pittsburgh's fascination with all things black and gold. Pittsburgh is the only city in America whose professional sports teams all wear the same team colors of black and gold. If you've been paying attention on our journey today, you probably noticed that most, if not all, of our bridges are painted yellow. So where does this fixation with black and gold come from? Well, it dates back to our earliest days, when the city planners were first developing a corporate seal for the city. They wanted to further honor the legacy of William Pitt, the city was named after. So they patterned their corporate seal after William Pitt's family coat of arms, which were black and gold. So truly, our obsession with black and gold dates back to our earliest days. But the first professional sports team to wear black and gold was in 1925 by the Pittsburgh Pirates hockey team. That is correct. In 1925, Pittsburgh had its first professional hockey team, and they named them the Pittsburgh Pirates after the already established Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team. Unfortunately, they were sold after 5 seasons, moved to Philadelphia, and renamed the Clippers. The next team to don the black and gold was in 1933 by our beloved professional football team, the Pittsburgh Pirates. That is correct. In 1933, Arts renamed its brand new football franchise after the already established Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team. He renamed them the Steelers until 1940. These other teams that were naming themselves after the already established Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team may have been surprised to learn that the Pittsburgh Pirates were not even the Pittsburgh Pirates when they were first formed back in 1887. They were the Pittsburgh Alleghenies. But the Alleghenies ownership got a reputation for signing away players from other teams. So the other team owners and their players started accusing the Alleghenies of pirating their players from them. And the name stuck. Well, Pittsburgher attitude, Pittsburgher mentality. Was the team ownership upset about this name calling? Did they get offended? Did they file a grievance? Nope, they own it. Pirates got a name for a team anyway. They officially renamed the team the Pittsburgh Pirates. And in 1903, they were the first team in the nation to play in the World Series right here in Exposition Park, which was located right about where the People's Gas Company is located today. Unfortunately, they lost the Boston Mariners. In 1960, the Pittsburgh Penguins hockey team was formed, and they didn't wear a black and gold scarf, they wore
I was
gold
trying
white.
to drink it so
But
it
the
doesn't
Penguins
fall
ownership
down.
got caught in the same city of champions feud that we all did. Because that was the year prior that the Pirates won the World Series and the Steelers won the Super Bowl. Who can forget the iconic Sports Illustrated cover with Terry Bradshaw and Willie Stargell? So the Penguins ownership wanted it in the act. They went to the NHL and they said, we're going to change our team colors to black and gold. The NHL said, no. We already have a black and gold team in the league. It's called the Boston Bruins. You can't change your team colors to black and gold. But what goes around comes around. Because the Penguins produced photographic evidence of the original 1925 Pittsburgh Pirates hockey team wearing black and gold. With that bit of historical evidence in hand, the NHL relented. They said, fine, you can change your team colors to black and gold. Since that time, just about every professional sports team to come and go in Pittsburgh has worn black and gold. The only exception that I can think of personally is the Pittsburgh Maulers, USFL. And we all know how that turned out.
Fountain.
Pittsburgh sports fans have been accused of bleeding black and gold. They're some of the most passionate sports fans in the country and even the world. Well, guess what? We can prove it. True story. In 2005, Henry James Smith passed away. His death was not unexpected, so it gave he and his family time to plan the funeral that he wanted. So when the fateful day came, the friends and family were received at the funeral home. They were not met with a traditional viewing of a casket and flowers and somber music. Instead, they were met with a view of how the Henry James Smith household might have looked like on Steelers game day. Henry wasn't laid out in a casket. He was reclining in his favorite easy chair, wearing black and gold silk pajamas, a bathrobe, and across his lap was draped a Pittsburgh Steelers blanket. In one hand, he was holding a remote control. In the other hand, a can of Iron City beer. A few feet away from him, a large screen television was running endless loops of Steelers highlights. Proving once and for all that when you're a Steelers fan for life. And the afterlife. Well, this time we are leaving the Allegheny River and we're going to be sailing briefly along the Ohio River. It's at this time that I encourage you to turn your gaze to the back of the boat. Because it's there, you'll get a better view of a dashing and handsome special effects than you ever hope to get your eyes on. But beyond that is a view of the most dramatic view of the downtown city skyline anywhere in the country, the downtown Pittsburgh city skyline, Point State Park, and its iconic fountain. Feel free to take a moment to enjoy that view and take a photo and selfie or two. I'll be back with you in just a moment.
So she's not all by herself. Yeah, because we're eating. And Poppy, our juice got to go now.
Okay, these ketchups are open. Okay.
You're certainly welcome to continue to enjoy that view and take those photos. But this would not be a fun, interesting, and even a little strange trip through Pittsburgh without addressing the white elephant in the room.
कति पल्ट पानी न पानी
A
चुसेर
submarine floating in the Ohio River right next to us. The Carnegie Science Center has been referred to as an amusement park for minds.
चिज त तातो तातो छ
250 interactive exhibits inside the Carnegie Science Center. But of those 250 interactive exhibits inside the Carnegie Science Center, its most intriguing exhibit is floating outside in the Ohio River. A World War II era submarine called the USS
Oh, you want the
Rainbow.
mustard? Because
The USS
I
Rainbow
need to
was
open
commissioned in
it.
April of
I need to open
1945.
it.
Since it was built toward the end of World War II, it never saw any battle action, but did serve the Navy for several decades as a training vessel. In fact, there have been sailors who served on the USS Rainbow who've taken tours just like this one on the Gateway River Fleet, who insist that they hold the record for the longest undersea dive, although that has not been corroborated. The USS Raquin, which is French for shark, could house up to 88 sailors, each of whom was granted one 90-second shower using salt water per week. The only crew member that was granted one 90-second shower every day using fresh water was the cook. Turns out back in the day, they wanted somebody clean handling their food. Pittsburgh has been the site of the first of many innovations. AC, alternative electricity, was developed right here. George Westinghouse was an industrialist born in New York when he moved to Pittsburgh in 1869. As the years went by, he began experimenting with what he believed to be the future of electrical current, AC, or alternating current, compared to Thomas Edison's DC, or direct current electricity. Westinghouse purchased the patent of Nikola Tesla in 1888.
Tesla had already made far-reaching advances in the field, and he moved to Pittsburgh to work with Westinghouse for a year to develop the program. But due to some financial troubles on Westinghouse's part, and the backlash of a smear campaign perpetrated by Thomas Edison, Westinghouse had to renegotiate his deal with Tesla. And stunningly, Tesla agreed to waiving all royalties, past, present, and future, for use of his invention. Many would consider this to be Tesla's greatest financial blunder. But he was so passionate about bringing electricity to the masses, it little thought over his own personal gain. With that partnership firmly in place, Westinghouse successfully outbid Edison's GE Corporation for the illumination of the Chicago World's Fair. Westinghouse beat GE's $1 million bid by half, and building on that success, secured the rights to building AC power generators at the base of the Niagara River Falls.
तल बसेर खाइरहेको छ
Well,
I'm thank you
Westinghouse and Tesla working to illuminate the masses, another enterprising Pittsburgher answered the call, a different type of call put out by the organizers of the Chicago World's Fair. The Chicago World's Fair was seeking a world-class centerpiece to rival that of the Eiffel Tower, which had been unveiled at the Paris World's Fair years before. A young bridge inspector and engineer from Pittsburgh submitted his design for what he felt would be that world-class centerpiece. But his colleagues said that it would never work, that it would collapse under its own weight, and that he was a fool. Well, Pittsburgher mentality and Pittsburgher attitude. He spent $25,000 of his own money on detailed blueprints, safety studies, and hiring more engineers. So in 1892, his design was accepted by the organizers of the World's Fair as their answer to the Eiffel Tower. His design would go on to stand 265 feet tall. It would be hoisted on the two towers 140 feet into the air, held together by a center axle that was 45 feet wide and weighed 70 tons. At the time, it was the largest piece of steel ever forged at the Bethlehem Steel Works in Pittsburgh. The design would go on to hold 36 wooden cars, with seating for 40 and room for 20 more standing. At its maximum capacity, it could hold 2,100 passengers. Of course, I'm referring to the invention of one George Washington Gale Ferris Jr. and the Ferris wheel. For 19 weeks, 1.4 million people paid 50 cents for a 20-minute ride. And by the way, the world's first Ferris wheel was illuminated by over 3,000 Westinghouse light bulbs. After the Chicago World's Fair, the world's first Ferris wheel was sold to a scrapping company. It did reappear a few years later at the New Orleans World's Fair, but after the New Orleans World's Fair, the world's first Ferris wheel was dynamited into scrap. Gale Ferris's greatest invention would go on to prove his ultimate undoing. He unsuccessfully sued the organizers of the World's Fair for his share of the profits from the use of the Ferris wheel. He was also unsuccessful in defending his patent in court. Sadly, Gale Ferris Jr. died at just 37 years of age, widowed, penniless, and suffering from typhoid fever. Another example of Pittsburgh innovation, Pittsburgh was among the first cities in the nation to employ a series of electric-powered streetcars as part of their mass transit system. From the late 1800s through 1985, and at the height of their use, Pittsburgh operated over 600 miles of track and owned 1,000 electric-powered streetcars. And they weren't just streetcars. They were pickup trucks, even a double-decker bus. In the 1950s, the Port Authority was formed. It was their plan to phase out the electric streetcar system and replace it with a more modern fleet of buses. So on July 6th of 1985, the last electric-powered streetcar rolled through downtown. Right around the same time, the city unveiled its brand new light rail system known as the T. What was this modern contemporary T, you ask? They're streetcars. Essentially what they are, they're streetcars. They're just streetcars that happen to go underground in the nation's shortest subway system. But that subway system employs tunnels that were built back in 1828 as part of the Pennsylvania Canal. What, Ron? There's no such thing as the Pennsylvania Canal. And today you would be correct. But in 1828, the state decided it needed a way to shorten the trip between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And the vision of the Pennsylvania Canal was born. But don't let the name fool you. The Pennsylvania Canal was not a trip entirely by water. Take a look over to the right side of the boat, a little bit toward the back. You can see the second of our two remaining inclines, the Duquesne Incline. And the Pennsylvania Canal employed inclines to haul the boats over the more mountainous regions of the state. Just to complete one section of the Pennsylvania Canal, which joined Johnstown to Pittsburgh, they had to build 64 locks, 10 dams, 2 tunnels, 16 aqueducts, 64 culverts, and 152 bridges. But the Pennsylvania Canal successfully shortened the trip between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh from 2 weeks to 4 days. Problem was, along came the railroad, which shortened the trip to 1 day. And the entire Pennsylvania Canal, and just that one section which joined Johnstown to Pittsburgh, in which they had to build 64 locks, 10 dams, 2 tunnels, 16 aqueducts, 64 culverts, 152 bridges, was abandoned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are quickly coming to a close on our fun, interesting, and even a little strange trip through Pittsburgh. It is one of 4 different narrations, which includes our classic or traditional sightseeing cruise, which points out many more of the skyscrapers and landmarks and other Pittsburgh stories. We also have How Pittsburgh Became Pittsburgh, an in-depth historical study about this great city. And returning later this season, Hard-Hit Pittsburgh, all the things that go bump in the night along these 3 rivers. But before we wrap things up entirely, I'm going to share a little more Pittsburghese with you and a personal story, if I may. I was born and raised here in Pittsburgh, but like a lot of people, I've moved away from time to time for work-related reasons. So I worked in states like Michigan, New York State, West Virginia, and New Jersey. And while I was moving around, I was very proud of my heritage. I wore black and gold wherever I was. But while I was moving around, I was determined I was not going to be a Pittsburgher. I was not going to have that #1 ugliest accent in America. I was going to properly pronounce my O's and my OW's. I was not going to be a Pittsburgher. I was wrong. While working in New Jersey as a store manager for a well-known sports retailer, at one time I asked my part-time associate to go run the sweeper. He disappeared for 10 minutes. I finally found him in a stockroom and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "You said something about running a sweeper, so I thought you wanted me to sweep the stockroom." It was then that I realized I was a Pittsburgher. I took a deep breath, I gritted my teeth, and I said, "Go vacuum the carpet." It turns out it's not just how we say things, it's certain words and phrases that it turns out are not universally accepted throughout the rest of the country. A few other shining examples. We don't have carts in this town, we have buggies. We don't drink soda, we drink pop. We don't have sliced ham, we got chip chop ham from Isley. We don't clean, we red up. We don't wear bandanas, we wear babushkas. If you're walking through the forest and you brush up against a prickly bush, it's a Jagger bush. It's also how we refer to ourselves in a not-so-nice fashion. I will not repeat it because this is, after all, a family boat. But it just made its way into the Webster's Dictionary for the very first time. Look it up. If you're walking across a surface that's not particularly secure, it's slippy. If you like your eggs somewhere between sunny side up and over easy, you like them dippy. And if you're a busybody and put your nose in other people's affairs, then you are nebby. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to be your tour guide on our fun, interesting, and strange trip to the city. I do accept the gratitude in any form you might find appropriate, and I look forward to greeting you as you disembark the boat. Thank you so much for joining us in the Gateway Clippers Princess Riverboat. We hope to see you again very soon.
Finally, we're done.
Every time we accomplish something, you're like, finally.